I'm going to dive right in here because we're actually going for a world record here today in terms of speed of presentation. And that will be tough because I've set some good personal bests. Ryan Eady once speculated on his blog that I did not breathe while presenting. It's not true. I do occasionally. But we're going to try and cover a lot of material because when we initially set to scope out the presentation, it was Art Rhino, who's been very closely involved with our project in collaborating and evaluating work with the provinces that we've been doing, said really it was very difficult for people to understand some of the technical aspects of the work that we were doing without some kind of sense of the user experience, which is where we started. So we're going to try and combine the two today, which explains why I'm up here hogging the mic, even though I wasn't even on the program. I'm Beth Jefferson. I'm the founder of BiblioCommons. But what we're also going to be talking about, Peter is the data architect, Fabien the technical architect, and we're going to try and bring it all together. So first of all, just a tiny bit of context. This is really a project that started just over a year ago with very extensive user research. So we kind of hit away, did a lot of quantitative, qualitative work, and it was only last July 3 provinces in Canada, BC, Alberta, and Ontario, came together to provide some proof of concept funding, said, all sounds great, but what does it look like and is it feasible? So we're going to show you some snapshots, not the complete wireframes, but snapshots of those wireframes. And certainly, as with any of the technical points, if you're interested in following up, we'll leave our contact information. We encourage you. We're hoping to just start a conversation on all of this as we go through at a very quick pace. So where we're at today, we began development having done very detailed technical specifications. And so what we're really focused on today is the user experience and the architectural design principles that support that. We are scheduled right now, in spite of Mike's advice that we don't announce dates, we are scheduled for a beta release of first phase functionality with a beta group of users at a beta group of libraries in 3 provinces in May. So hopefully by this time next year we'll have a lot more to report on. But in terms of where we started out and the objectives, what we're trying to achieve, really in terms of the research, and I think everybody knows this, it's not that users are complaining that they're saying this doesn't work, they're just going elsewhere. And so in our research, over and over you hear, I go to Amazon, I click on Amazon, I'll do that search on Amazon. It's not just Amazon, it's a variety of sources. And what they do then is quite happily return to the library, and our research is focused on public, return to the public library as a cheap fulfillment mechanism. So in the end, it's not really the user in terms of where the problem lies on the public library side. It's really us who's missing out, a huge missed opportunity, and threats too that come with that position. So our starting point then is we thought about that user and how do we recapture, discovery and browsing has always been such a huge part of the public library experience, how do we recapture and create that as people move online and continue to satisfy that? So our point as we think about this, what the next generation catalog is it has to be about much more than some of the technical underpinnings, although they're absolutely essential, and even some of the next phase in terms of faceted search. If we think to the future, not in terms of some of what we're playing catch up on, it's really when you look at the Microsofts, the Yahoos, and the Googles, and what do they think of the future of search and discovery, it's what social search and discovery. So what does that mean? It's social search and discovery is really about 3 things. Not kind of taking social networking for the sake of social networking, but really using social connections to enhance the discovery experience, making the catalog about discovering, not just finding, about switching the focus from relevancy, not just for the average user, but for me, or personalizing it, and thinking of connections not just to catalog content, but to community conversations and other users' collections, but using the catalog to organize all of that. So just focusing on discovery, a lot of the talk when we think about the next generation catalog is really, and Tito touched on this morning, about limiting searches. How do we get people down to less? But in fact, in our research, we did find, as you were talking about, that people are really interested in alternative ways of exploring for more. They don't know always what they're searching for and are looking for tools to help them. And the community contributed content, which is our focus, is really a key element of that. In terms of the lists, the tags, and a variety of others. And it's critical that that's integrated into the catalog. And that they can browse it quickly and easily as they can the shelves. So just in terms of the technology that supports that.
Yeah, there's 3 layers that I'd like to address. One is the set of Ajax widgets. And Ajax is, a lot of people have been using it already. We save data, we take data from the user interface. It's a lot more granular than a page post. Oh, sorry. We take data from the interface, data bits, data elements, and we save it to the memory. That leads to faster performance from a user standpoint. Then we have a relational database. There was some talk this morning about relational database versus XML repositories versus XML database for that matter. Our position is don't choose one, use both. Relational databases are wonderful. They can be used for relational data. XML repository are wonderful for full text content, and you really need the two. So what we do is we then have object factories. These object factories are aggregators of data, user-generated data. They're also classes that allow us to load data from disk, keep them in memory, and enter and serialize the data back to disk in an XML representation. Another thing that's very important is to decouple the data in transit from the data in storage. It's very easy to get to think, well, because I have data in a certain format, then I'm stuck with that. That is not the case. I mean, take Solr, for example. Solr requires a certain data format, and other things like ANSIP, like all this stuff, requires certain format. So we use a relational database to preserve that data that is very important. We need relational data because we need to attach users to bibliographic content. Otherwise, it's meaningless. So we're trying to basically make an open session approach. Having object factories enhances performance and allows us to do a lot of analytics on the road. Another thing I'm not going to spend, I could spend like an hour on this and we don't have an hour, is our technology stack. I'm putting that here because this is going to be checked in and you are going to have access to that. I would love to discuss this further with you. I really would. So we're doing it, an open source J2E, large scale enterprise kind of thing, clusters, arrays, load balancers, caches, and a lot of stuff that I'd love to discuss further with you, but we don't have time. She won't let me.
Here's a very high-level view of the data model. And some of the key concepts to take is a user can be a patron of multiple libraries, and also a bibliographic can obviously belong to multiple libraries. And the other key component is any content generated by a user is attached to the user itself and in the context of a specific bib. This gives us some flexibility to look at the data from a variety of different angles and aggregate it from a variety of different ways for future use.
Okay, so the second point then, moving on from discovery, is about relevancy, getting to personalized relevancy, which is where we're going. So if you think about kind of the typical model, you come into Amazon, it says it's 4 stars, and it's customers who also bought this book. Look what they also bought, Harry Potter, Harry Potter, and Harry Potter. So the question is, we know that there's 100 million users that go in and rate Harry Potter. I'm not actually interested in the average of them. It's not very telling. I'm interested in the average or the opinions and the connections of people like me. So we're looking at a variety of different ways of doing that. One is demographic. And so allowing users to come in and say, you know what, as a grade 3 student looking at a Pioneer project, I don't really care what teachers or somebody 65 thought of this. I care what other 7-year-old girls thought of this book. And so when you do that, it allows you to do a bunch of things in refreshing the user-generated content if you click through on that. So it's not just people who have this in their collections or people who like this also like, but it's 7 to 12-year-old girls who like this also like, and it gets them closer to content that is relevant to me. The other way of doing this isn't thinking just about the demographic split, but allowing users to self-select sources that they trust, sources for domain expertise or for taste, for aesthetic judgment. And so if you think about, again, Amazon being a kind of a 12-year-old technology and how they might do this today, when you went out, if you go into Amazon and you say, was this review helpful to you? And you say, yes, I think that person sounds really smart. You store yes, but it's not associated with you in any way. It doesn't carry with you, and it doesn't affect any of the search results that you get in the future or the way that your relevancy is ranked. So as we build this and building on different design patterns in music and elsewhere, it's becoming very standard. If you see a review you like or a reviewer who you think is smart, you actually choose to select them. You add them to a network of trusted sources, or you can ignore them. In adding them, you add them not only as a user, but as for a specific domain of expertise or judgment. So I may be interested in what she has to say as my teacher about pioneers, but not really interested in her music or her fiction. So it gives you the choice, or for all, and then all of that stays with you. And it's really about making sure that that social data stays with the user who gives it in context, so that now my result sets are prioritized so that her reviews among 3,000 come out at the top. It also feeds reviews in the form of recommendations when I log on by people that I self-select. So I'm not relying entirely on algorithms, I'm relying on the user to meet me halfway. Technology?
Yeah, we found that social data, as I said before, is most valuable when it's kept and it's coupled with the user. In other words, do not lose the provenance of the data. It says a lot about who made that opinion and whether that becomes relevant to you. We do have a user preference subsystem. Think of it as a two-way. I want to control what I give to people, what I expose. I want to control what I see. That's very important because, again, it really caters to the user experience. The third is that every data that is, it's a general, the design principle, every data that is user-generated is associated with a bit record, and it's associated with other users through your network. We'll show you later how we've decoupled the bits from the library bits, and we can determine that a book is carried in multiple institutions, which allows you to go beyond the walls of a given library for the sake of social networking.
So for user preferences, how does it affect the data model? As you can see, you can add user preferences. These user preferences control what data the user wants to show to the general public and what data they want to see from the general public.
Back to me. So thinking again about the third element then of connections. So beyond thinking outside the box of the library, not just linking to catalog content, but to community conversations as well, and also to other users' collections, which we think is kind of an important part of the library of the future. What we're really trying to do in our research is get away from this. The thesauri could not find anything matching. And you get that for a whole variety of reasons, not just because of search. So if we think about what do we do to solve that thesauri could not find anything, I mean, the most obvious one is obviously putting opportunities, if there are interlibrary loan, putting them in the user's public library or their home catalog interface. And that's enabled by our architecture. So that they're looking not only at what's available at my library, but what's available right there in context for other opportunities. Or perhaps then suggesting it for purchase right there, or requesting what we call a share from another user who has identified themselves as owning an item and willing to use the library as a hub for sharing it with other users. The other way that you might extend that user who's coming in and doing a search, and these are from actual search logs at one of our Bale libraries, a head injury search that somebody's actually persisted it with for 20 minutes in our search logs, trying to find something that was relevant. So if you think about another use case where they come in, they're looking for answers. They're not looking for resources. And so if we think about this, what we're trying to do is actually put both community resources and conversations that are of interest to people who are looking in the OPAC for resources there where they're looking for them. They do a search for head injuries, and they want to come up with these. So the question is, how do we get these things there? How do we, in this kind of automagically way, bring the community's resources, the discussions, to the page, the bibliographic record page? And the answer is we kind of go halfway. Algorithms go halfway, but we do what Google in this talk calls human computation, which is a good talk if you haven't listened to it on Google Video. And so basically we're engaging users, or trying to engage users, to take us halfway, to say, okay, who's going to be interested, if you're creating a discussion thread, who's going to be interested in that discussion thread? And they use the metadata of the library, the collection, to organize that. And so they are asked to associate their discussion with titles, with tags, and with subject headings, so that now we can automatically put it on the right pages without guessing. Same thing with community resources, events, and community services. The other, it also applies in terms of asking a question. They don't find what they're looking for, they want to ask a question. And this is, again, a real live one. So somebody looking for assistance with traumatic brain injury and dealing with mood swings. Very specific question. How are we going to help them answer it? Well, we could put it on a board like Yahoo Answers does, with kind of millions of other questions and hope randomly that somebody knows the answer is going to find that. And allow them to drill down and say, well, basically it's a health question with fixed categories, health, mental health. But I get to there and I get mental health is the lowest level of granularity I can get. And I'm going to have my question about traumatic brain injury mixed in with why can't you mix grapefruit juice with Valium? And so these kind of fixed categories aren't going to allow us to get granular enough, but the metadata of the collection does. So what I do is when somebody asks a question, again, we take them and say, who's going to be able to help us answer that question? Specify geographically, specify the tags, or specify the titles. And now what we can do is put that question in front of the people who are likely to have the answers. People who have related titles in their collections, where they're looking for it. So when they log in to check in, they're checked out, for example, here it is, answer a question. And then the final thing is sometimes people actually just want to connect with a real person to answer a question. They don't care if it's a book, they just have a question they want to find an answer to. And so what we're also doing is putting people in the OPAC. And we put people in the OPAC by association with the metadata that is associated with their collections that they've chosen to add, their ratings, histories, and their commentary. And that allows a user then to connect real time in the OPAC. So the OPAC is much more than just an inventory tool.
So now going back to data models, it's building connections beyond the collections, and you can see, a user can be related to a question, and that's based on certain tags as best shown or other kinds of information. Similarly, a user can associate themselves with a group, and a user can associate them with other users if they own a book that they might want to share with other potential users.
Okay, so this, we've touched on this many times. The thing is, this social data is only valuable, particularly if you get down to this level of detail, when there's lots and lots of it. So you need a huge number of users, and the data has to be tied back to the user. So what are we challenged to do then is to engage not just the typical 1% that contribute to most communities, where they're contributing 50% of the content, but really going much deeper into the pyramid. And what we know is that if you build it, they won't necessarily come. Jacob Nielsen's written a good article on this. There's a lot in the literature right now. So we've focused a lot of time on how to maximize the breadth of participation. And really there are three principles here. One is being in the flow of an existing activity, approaching costless in terms of time and cognitive load, and aligning motivations. Karen Schneider has done some interesting writing in terms of motivations with OCLC WordCat. They come into play, and we'll talk about them in a second. On the in the flow, this is really our starting point. My account in a public library environment, 40% of online users report checking my account several times a week or more. That's phenomenal. That's the traffic that we need to tap into. That's an incredible opportunity to engage users, not only in getting data, but in giving it. And that's the way we've designed our environment, so that from this interface, without losing the context, without losing the flow, it's really easy to add a rating, which is the most valuable piece of data that we can get from anyone. And then layering the opportunity to give more data for those highly engaged users that are going to contribute a mass of it, but not overwhelming the user who doesn't want to give those. In terms of motivations, this is one of the things I think it's easy for us to lose track of. Early adopters in this technology, in terms of participating in the social web, have different motivations than the mainstream user. And in our research, really, it broke down. We don't hear a lot about voice, even social connections. It's, there's public good, helping to build a better catalog. They want to get something out of it. They want to get recommendations. And there's a whole segment, and Jacob Nielsen writes about this, that you got to give them something to do it. You got to give them something. They want chances to win. They want to earn community credits. And so what we've built in to this, 1 minute? Sorry, I missed the first one. Let's go to here.
I'm actually going to skip Ajax because it's not the most complex. What we're going to do is we're building, integrating the LS with low footprint web services. I would love to talk to you some more about that model. And we're going to put it under open source, by the way. So we're going to give it away. And I agree that that's not free. It certainly is not free for us, but it's going to be free for you. And there's a lot of choice, and we'd love for the community to contribute to that as well. But it's going to be reusable, repurposable web service clients that you can use for any vendors whatsoever to interact with your OPAC. That is the data flow. It does transaction, it does checkout, it does logins, it does a whole bunch of things. It's SOAP, it's NSIP, it's a bunch of things. We can talk some more about that.
I think basically the challenge is bringing this all together, and really it's a question of what's the upside if we do. And libraries often underestimate themselves, I think. If we tap into that traffic right now on the My Account page, in public libraries alone, you've basically got a third of the traffic of MySpace for a page that looks like that. So if you think about what could you actually get if we can do it, and what if we tapped into the energy of our users, again, think of where we are versus some of those things that we keep saying we have to be out there. Our users are there. We need to give them something to do, and ways of tapping into their energy when they're there, and that's what we're about. Thanks.
They can take a question while Kevin's getting set up.
That was very fast. Where can I find the slides?
We will make slides available. And we're also happy, as we said, if there are users who are interested in going more, our contact information will be there as well. And there's lots of opportunities in different web conference environments as well to show you some of what we've been up to. We'd love to tap into this group's experience.